Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Monday, September 21st, 2020, and I'm one of your hosts, Trevor Starkey, and Logan is off this week, so joining me we have, my Phoenix son, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
And my former Phoenix son, Frank Bizzani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good.
Dude,
Boo! Boo!
you,
Lazy!
What do you want me to
Boo!
say?
what lazy? It's actually way more work to leave Arizona than it is to stay. So it's quite the
No,
opposite of
no,
lazy,
your
I would
your
say.
your introduction,
My intro is
you
lazy.
literally just recycled Logan's introduction twice.
Hey,
Boo!
look, I don't do the crappy introductions. Okay, I leave that to like the Greg Millers of the world. Like I have too much on my mind in terms of like analysis of the day's news to come up with dumb little quippy nicknames for everybody. So these ones work, so I kept them. So deal with it.
I'm officially naming myself the Chancellor of quippy nicknames for that nerdy site.
That's, I mean, sure. I'm never going to call you that. I will, in fact, forget that you even called yourself that in 5 minutes, I'm sure.
It's okay. I'm gonna order some new business cards. It's fine.
We'll see. We'll see about that. Well, let's dive right on into the big story of the day. I definitely went to bed last night being like, I don't know, like I mean, because we obviously already covered the big PlayStation news of the pre-orders and stuff on last week's show because we kind of held and recorded late. So I went to bed last night thinking, what are we going to talk about this week? Because we were going to be recording this pre-Xbox pre-orders and everything. So I was like, yeah, it'll be probably a pretty light day. And then I wake up to like groundbreaking news, which actually was weird in my Twitter feed because I scrolled through and I saw a whole bunch of like references to the fact that there was like earth-shattering industry news today, but it took me about like a minute or two to actually find what had happened in my feed. Like I was just there were so many reactions to the news that I didn't see the news itself. But the big news, of course, today is that Microsoft has kind of made a bid to acquire ZeniMax, aka the company behind Bethesda and all of the studios underneath Bethesda's umbrella. So yeah, kind of diving right in with that, I will throw it over to the Xbox Wire, where Phil Spencer kind of wrote, welcoming the talented teams and beloved game franchises of Bethesda to Xbox. Today is a special day as we welcome some of the most accomplished studios in the games industry to Xbox. We are thrilled to announce Microsoft has entered into an agreement to acquire ZeniMax Media, parent company of Bethesda Softworks. As one of the largest, most critically acclaimed privately held game developers and publishers in the world, Bethesda is an incredibly talented group of 2,300 people worldwide who make up some of the most accomplished creative studios in our industry across Bethesda Softworks, Bethesda Game Studios, id Software, ZeniMax Online Studios, Arcane, Machine Games, Tango Gameworks, AlphaDog, and Roundhouse Studios. These are the teams responsible for the franchises like The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Wolfenstein, Doom, Dishonored, Prey, Quake, Starfield, and many more. So I will kind of leave it at that in terms of kind of that. The article there just kind of goes on to like, hey, we at Microsoft love Bethesda, and Bethesda's always been good to Microsoft. So yeah, this was the big news that broke at like 6 a.m. our time. So it was there waiting for me when I woke up at like 8 o'clock. Yeah, that's kind of the big news of the day. So let's just kind of dive right on in and talk about it. What are your guys' initial impressions? Let me throw it to you first, Cam.
Well, let me just say this. I've known this for a while, but I think it's going to come as a shock to a lot of people. People may not know this. Phil Spencer, enormous fan of Fallout New Vegas. Enormous fan of Fallout New Vegas.
So this is all just a ploy to get a New Vegas 2?
Yeah, because in order for a New Vegas 2 to happen, you would have to take Bethesda and make them work with Obsidian. And the only way that could happen is if you have the absolute might of an industry titan like Phil Spencer. And like where there is a will, there is a way, and gotta give it up to Phil as another big stan of Fallout New Vegas. I know he understands, like we understand each other's passion for the game, So without a doubt, like,
I mean, I
what
don't
a
think
coup
I don't think he
for
understands
the
your
Fallout
passion at all
fans.
for the game, Cameron. I don't think he knows at all how you feel about Fallout New Vegas.
Listen,
They
man,
talked about
he doesn't need to know. He doesn't need to know me to know my passion. Us New Vegas fans know each other, just innately.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can feel each other in the atmosphere. All right. No, in all seriousness, I woke up at like 6:30 this morning to the news, and I was like, yeah, I thought I was still sleeping because it's such a wild piece of news. I was talking about it with my brother-in-law even about it, and just like, it's enormous. It's a massive coup for them once again. Microsoft is establishing themselves away from atypical like gaming like publisher, console maker, company, etc. Xbox and Microsoft are clearly like, once again, they are tripling down on their uh, and a lot of people I think are concerned. Does this mean like is Deathloop still going to be a timed exclusive? Is all these other prior deals? Phil Spencer has come out and said, of course, that that will be the case. Prior agreements are still in good standing. There will be no reason to break those. And it really goes back. I think this is a big part of what we saw with Microsoft when they bought Mojang.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
Mojang. People were like, well, Minecraft's going to be exclusive to Xbox, and they came out and said no, because part of what makes Minecraft is that you can play it on any space, any console, and we want to support that. And that was a big thing that Phil did when he first actually stepped into his role. And then, like, he has been, like, his vision for Xbox, and he said this, if anybody wants to go back, honestly, it's an absolute coup. Giant Bomb at Night panels during the E3.
Mm-hmm.
Phil Spencer, like, it's sad we didn't get one this year, but every year up until now that Phil Spencer's been the head of Xbox, he has sat down with Jeff Gerstmann one-on-one, and Jeff Gerstmann asks him the questions that people actually want to know. No PR nonsense. And Phil sits there, usually with a drink in hand, and just, like, lays it all out. And, like, doesn't hold back any punches, and, like, talks about things as they are. Like, he's just like, it's not like oh, well, we don't really see ourselves as the loser. He goes, no, we lost. We have to change our strategy. We have to pivot. And he's such a brilliant, like, I often make the joke, man, I wish Phil Spencer was my dad. Not often enough that I think, like, I'm known for it, but, like, I've definitely put that joke out there on Twitter. And I've seen other people do that too, because Phil Spencer definitely pulls off that, like, your friend's dad that you wish was your dad because your dad's just, like, a boring accountant. And Phil Spencer's the cool dude who runs Xbox. Phil Spencer just has that vibe to him. And so he has really taken this strategy of, and they said it when they first announced that they'd start doing complete crossplay or crossover between PC and Xbox. And people were like, well, you're gonna destroy your ecosystem. You're going to destroy your exclusivity. Who's going to buy an Xbox now? And we've seen with the hype around the Xbox Series X that that's not the case. There's massive attention and demand for it. So the question, and we'll see like what those numbers eke out to be after this next week. But the reality of it, the situation is Microsoft is dedicated towards essentially establishing themselves as a service entity rather than a traditional console maker publisher entity. And it's a similar way what we saw with a pivot back with the Wii for Nintendo, when Nintendo said, we're not going to try to stay in competition with the graphics, the push for graphics and fidelity and HD that Sony and Microsoft are doing. We're going to do our own thing, and it's been extremely successful for them, barring the objective failure of the Wii U, which anything after the Wii was going to be considered a failure. And then we see the success with the Switch. Like, once again, they've carved out their niche. Microsoft's failure with the Xbox One has clearly allowed them to now carve out this niche as a service platform where they believe 100% that you should be able to game anywhere on whatever console you want, on whatever console of your choice, and whether it's PC console, PS5, Xbox Series X, whatever the situation is, they want you to be able to play the games where you want and how you want. And this is just a firm establishment of that. Like, expect the next Elder Scrolls game to come out on PS5. Expect these things not to be exclusives, or maybe even just timed exclusives, but don't anticipate that being the norm, because this is very much Phil Spencer's MO. He no longer, Microsoft no longer sees themselves, it's debatable, of course, no longer sees themselves in direct competition with Sony anymore. They've changed their approach. They've changed the way that they're handling their future of the industry and what Xbox will mean in the future. And I'm stoked, man. This is just such a coup for them. I made jokes about Fallout New Vegas 2, but that was a big thing that prevented Fallout New Vegas 1 from. And honestly, I'm stoked for the possibilities of a lot of these studios now having more resources. Bethesda games were considered AAA games, but they're always shipped out in, especially Bethesda Game Studios games, are always shipped out in a really buggy state.
Yeah, there was a couple things that have been going around today. One, people have been tweeting at Obsidian of does this mean we're going to get a New Vegas 2? And Obsidian quote tweeted somebody and basically did the shrug emoji. So I think they're all excited at the potential idea, but obviously way too early to know if any of that kind of stuff is going to be made. But one of the things that also came out today is Todd Howard, in his kind of response to the news, teased that they are working on the biggest engine overhaul since Oblivion, I believe, over at Bethesda Game Studios. So I had a tweet in drafts that I just couldn't figure out how to word it appropriately, but it was basically if it took $7.5 billion from Microsoft to get Bethesda to commit to new a new engine, we never had a chance at nickel and diming our way up through order after copy of Skyrim. So I'm perfectly fine with that.
Hey, and Skyrim's now going to come to a new platform. Cloud,
yeah,
the xCloud.
So that was one of the other things I saw. One of the joke tweets I saw going around was Todd Howard out there saying, well, we've run out of things to sell you Xbox on, or to sell you Skyrim on, so instead we're just going to sell you Skyrim every month for the rest of your life as part of Game Pass. Make you buy it every month, pennies on the dollar or whatever. But yeah, some of the other big details that are of note there. It was a $7.5 billion deal, which in comparison to other big mergers in recent years, a couple of note are Disney paid $4 billion for both Star Wars and another $4 billion for Marvel. So this is a bigger deal than that. A couple years back, earlier this year, AT&T was shopping around WB Games for $4 billion, but couldn't find the interest until they basically revealed their Batman games, and then suddenly they were like, hey, maybe there's actually potential here that we should just keep it ourselves. So they took it off the market. A couple years back...
Gosh, I just want to say AT&T sucks.
I mean, duh.
I hate them.
A couple years back... this is something that got overlooked, I think, a lot in the news of the day because it's not a segment of the industry we ever focus on. But I remembered that Activision paid a crap ton of money for King, the makers of Candy Crush, and everybody was that was absurd. And that was a $5.9 billion deal just a few years ago.
Oh, and that did not work out for them.
I mean, I think it probably worked out for them just fine. I think they've probably been making plenty of money on Candy Crush. It's just not
true.
Money that we hear about or anything like that.
That's true.
So yeah, it's
sorry. I was thinking about King. King went through a really bad time employment wise.
Mm-hmm.
They moved offices. They lost a bunch of workers and employees. They laid off a bunch of people. This was several years ago after their acquisition. But
I mean, it's entirely possible that was a cost-cutting measure from Activision Blizzard. I mean, just like Activision cut a ton of Blizzard employees a few years ago, the day that they were making announcements of their biggest, profiting quarter ever or something like that. Actually, I guess I don't remember. I always forget if it was Activision Blizzard or if it was EA. But like
No, that was Activision Blizzard.
both of them have done it. So
Yeah.
it's they definitely do that. In cycles and stuff. On Xbox's side of things, the Minecraft deal that you mentioned earlier was a $2 billion acquisition. So again, this being $7.5 billion, certainly the largest that I can pinpoint and point to in kind of our industry or even like related industries in recent years. And given that it is like 8-9 studios that I rattled off there, it makes sense that it's and some of the most iconic IP in gaming history, with stuff like Doom and Wolfenstein and Elder Scrolls and Fallout. It's a very pricey deal. Frank, let me throw it over to you for your impressions, your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought it was wild news. Kind of going back to what you were saying too, it's just kind of like for me out of the blue and kind of a surprise this morning. But ultimately, I was like, yeah, that's a great move. Like that's definitely something. If Phil Spencer sort of has like Microsoft's blessing in their deep pockets on that, like, yeah, you might as well. And especially because, yeah, I think with Game Pass and everything they're trying to do there, I think that's an amazing move because now, like you said too, now they have like 9 more of these amazing studios under their belt that are all going to be like putting games on Game Pass. And plus, yeah, that IP is just crazy valuable with how recognizable it is, and I think how far-reaching a lot of that is. And then they even, I don't know, it's cool too because you even have stuff like Elder Scrolls Online that's still going. So I think it'll be cool to see how that goes, and maybe there will even be some kind of a sequel to that or something that you may even see possibly on like Xbox Series X or just the Xbox platform in general. Yeah, I definitely think it's really awesome, and I'm glad to see those moves kind of being made. I'm kind of curious, going back to what you were saying about the engine swap, that is maybe even somewhat, if they got a lot of the funding coming in, or even if maybe that was one of the requirements from Microsoft. I'm just curious, like, what that would affect, because they're already in the process of like working on Starfield, and I feel like they'd probably be pretty deep. So that must only really apply to like the next Elder Scrolls, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was very much, my comment was a tongue-in-cheek kind of comment. It was very much like inferred from Todd Howard that it was something that they've already been working on. They've already, for the next Elder Scrolls, for the next Fallout, for Starfield, that they're working on, an engine overhaul before coming out with those games or going into those games. They're going to have a new engine behind them as opposed to kind of the jank that we've grown accustomed to the last 10 years.
I think that'd definitely be a good thing because I just like don't know if they can continue to get away with that anymore, and especially now if they are like backed by Microsoft, and maybe that is something that Microsoft will try to watch out for. But like I know that's something that I think people are a little bit over. But like I still think that
I mean, Microsoft did put out Crackdown 3 last year, so I don't know that I'd put like too much faith behind that.
I mean, honestly, though, I feel like that's one of the. I guess they could have canceled that too, but I just feel like that's one of those things where, like, sometimes your hands are tied. Like, especially for like even Phil Spencer's hands are tied. I can't imagine he wanted to put that out.
Yeah, not in the state it was in, but it was probably like it's a lost cause at this point. It's just throw it on Game Pass. Yeah, the big things that kind of came out in the immediate aftermath of this were one of the things that Cam has already alluded to. Like, there were questions around, what does this mean for Deathloop? What does this mean for Tokyo Ghostwire or Ghostwire Tokyo, which both have PlayStation exclusivity deals from Bethesda's studios, and Xbox has come out and said, we plan on, honoring those exclusivity deals, and they probably have to, through contract. Like, if they were to break that, Sony could, I'm sure, go after Xbox for violation of contract or whatever. And that's not a fight that anybody really wants to dive into. So that makes plenty of sense. But then the big question is, like, what does this mean for Elder Scrolls 6, for Starfield, for Fallout 5 when we eventually get that or whatever? Are those going to be Xbox exclusives, or are they going to be, on Game Pass as part of, Xbox's offerings there, but then, much like The Outer Worlds was last year, still shipped to third party or other developers, other like platforms. That's the word I'm looking for. And it's very much been kind of announced that those are going to be handled on a game by game basis. So I can very much see, yeah, they're probably not going to take Elder Scrolls 6 off of, especially, if PlayStation continues to sell well. They're not going to say like, no, we're going to keep this PlayStation exclusive, just like Minecraft, kind of as was touched on earlier. But it's all, they absolutely could, and basically make it a selling point of like, hey, if you want to play the next big RPGs from Bethesda, you have to get at least a Series S. It'll be interesting to see kind of how that all shakes out. Obviously, this all hitting the day before pre-orders go live was certainly a concerted effort, I imagine. But one of the theories I've kind of put out there was obviously the Series X and the Series S leaked a couple weeks ago, and with the dates and the pricing and all that stuff. And in the follow-up of that leak, Phil Spencer came out and said, I'm so proud of my team, for being able to kind of like deal with all this on the fly. This information was supposed to come out next week when he tweeted it, which would have been last week as of recording, basically the same week that PlayStation dropped all their stuff. And I kind of put the conspiracy theory hat on this morning of like, what if the Bethesda announcement was supposed to be tied into the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X date reveal and thing, and it was there was originally supposed to be a 20-minute video that Xbox was going to put out, basically saying like, here's all the information that you've been looking for, and here's one more thing. We'd like to welcome Bethesda Game Studios into the Xbox family. And just like the internet would have melted, much like it did today. But I think like all like as the like end of that kind of like conference punch, that would have certainly blown God of War 2 out of the water, I imagine. So yeah, what do you guys think of kind of the timing of everything? Do you think maybe these were originally aligned, or do you think they were just kind of like more convenient happenstance? Cam?
Like the timing of the news?
Yeah.
It's tough to say because this news didn't get leaked. It was announced traditionally.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself, like, it's crazy that this kind of news didn't at least get like rumors going around, because I heard nothing about it. And I didn't see anything about it either. Like, there was no rumors about them shopping around at like big. Xbox is always shopping around big studios right now.
Yeah, I'd seen rumors. I'd seen rumors to that effect. I hadn't seen like names of studios necessarily mentioned, but I had heard like rumors of Xbox trying to get another big acquisition under their belt going into the next gen.
Yeah, like definitely, like they've made no bones about keeping that a secret. Like they are. It's very well known that they're shopping around for studios still, even after that massive acquisition in E3 that they announced at E3 2019. So, like this is very interesting. It's certainly like they definitely like planned it out for sure, but like these type of plans don't usually go the way that this went. Something leaks. Wario puts out the news.
Especially Bethesda news leaks.
Yeah, Bethesda.
Like Jason Schreier, and maybe Jason Schreier has known about this for weeks, and was just kind of sitting on it. But yeah, Bethesda in particular was something you would always see kind of like leaking to Kotaku.
There's no way that Jason Schreier, after all the shit talk he's given about Todd Howard and Pete Hines, was gonna sit on this news. There's no way, after like with the relationship they have, that he'd give them the tip of the hat and general courtesy of doing such a thing. No, Jason Schreier.
I mean, if he didn't have a second source, he wouldn't go on it.
Oh, that's true. That is true, actually, because he's a journalist. He wouldn't do that. He's not in there for rumor propagating. He's in there for facts, just the facts, man. Sorry, that's actually like shoot. What was that? That was like a Dragnet reference?
Yeah,
that was a Dragnet reference. Weird.
Topical.
So topical.
What do you think here of the timing there, Frank?
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I think it probably had to have been because, like, I mean, as you guys know, business deals like this don't just get thrown up overnight. They've had to have been working on this for months, if not at least weeks.
I mean,
Especially,
it's like, especially
Years.
in the context
that's
of
true.
Deathloop being kind of like shown off last week, as part of the PlayStation conference. It's like, yes, somebody at Sony probably had some kind of inkling that this was going on, whether they could announce it or not, or speak to it in detail. But like, like, because of how intertwined Bethesda is with both of the publishers, you imagine people knew.
Yeah, I could
Oh,
definitely.
you think a board member of ZeniMax was getting divorced? Sorry, that's a weird tangent. A lot of times when like people need to divest themselves or like like they need cash quick, they'll like sell a company or they'll push for a sale of a company, and that just came to mind. Sorry, that's actually also like a pseudo Madman reference because that's what happens at the end of season one. No, at the end of season two, that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, fair. I can't imagine. So I mean, like, I feel like I remember seeing rumblings of ZeniMax looking at the idea of like selling a few years back too, but um,
I thought that
it's
was contained just to like their third part like their other partner studios though. I
right.
didn't
And
think that they'd sell the whole kit and caboodle.
I mean, especially with how Microsoft has seemingly been handling a lot of these acquisitions. Like, they seem to be acting pretty hands off so far on the studios. They're not like bringing studios in like EA to work on their other properties that they really want to focus on. They seem to be bringing in studios to just work on the things that they're good for, and they're good at, and they'll take over a lot of the administrative HR overhead kind of stuff. Like Double Fine is still working on weird things like Psychonauts and all that kind of stuff. So it's I think I think that makes it certainly much more enticing for a traditionally very independent kind of third-party publisher like Bethesda, that have prided themselves on their independence for the last 20 some odd years. For more on that, you can check out another great no-clip documentary from Danny O'Dwyer, back in the lead up to, was it the lead up to Fallout 76? I think that
Yeah, it was.
he did a big kind of deep
Yeah,
dive into Bethesda.
yeah, he did a like he was already doing the Bethesda retrospective,
Hmm.
and then they invited him to continue documenting the lead up to the launch of Fallout 76 or the announcement of Fallout 76.
Yeah. So,
So
so yeah, you can get kind of a lot more of those kinds of like stories of like, yeah, we've loved kind of marching to the beat of our own drum. So I imagine the fact that like Todd Howard and Pete Hines are both out there, championing this deal, alongside Phil Spencer. I imagine they're still going to more or less have a lot of that same kind of autonomy. And Microsoft is just going to help kind of foot the bill because they can, and this makes Game Pass that much more enticing. Obviously, another one of the big stories that has come out of today being, last time they kind of announced Game Pass numbers was back in April, and they talked about having about 10 million game like monthly subscribers, and the numbers that are coming out today are 15 million. So that it has gone up 50% in the 6 months of quarantine kind of, this era. And given people's love of so many of these iconic Bethesda properties, that seems to only is only going to jump up from here, as we go into the next gen. A question for you guys, in relation to this coming out the day before pre-orders are to go live. I think I kind of already know where you guys were at, but does this make you any more likely to, if not want to pre-order an Xbox system, at least like get a system somewhere down the line where you might not have otherwise been engaged? Frank, how about you?
For me, I don't think so. Like, definitely got love for Phil Spencer and the whole team, and even Bethesda and their games and everything like that. And I do think Game Pass is an incredible value, but it's just like not something that is grabbing me. And like, hey, you need to buy their console, or honestly, even like you even alluded to there, like even is like, hey, this could be your secondary or even your third console. I'm just kind of like, nah, I'm good for at least right now. Maybe way down the line when the Series S or the Series X is maybe at like even a better price point than it even already is, even though it's pretty good. It's like maybe even when it's lower or there's a good bundle or something, I might pick one up. Right now my Xbox One goes totally unused, so I just like I'm not ready to just dive into another like Xbox system.
Yeah, that's fair. And Cam, obviously, you're in a precarious financial system in between jobs right now. But if that weren't an issue, would this have enticed you to pre-order an Xbox at all, or are you still kind of like happy to not really dive into that as well?
It's interesting you brought that up because I mentioned that I would still be wanting to put off getting a PS5, even if I had the money for it. I kind of feel similar to the Xbox Series X, but at the same time, like I don't really feel like it's FOMO at this point. I think that it is a good buy. Like I could totally see myself picking this up, and like Game Pass, having access to everything from it, knowing that I'm gonna get the like latest Bethesda ZeniMax games day and date on Game Pass, so I don't have to worry about like the financial budgeting. Like this is actually like Game Pass in and of itself is just such a phenomenal deal, especially if you have like kids and like teens who like want to play the newest game but can't because it's a $60 drop and you got to wait till your birthday or Christmas or do a long laundry list of chores to get $20 and you got to save that up and over the couple weeks to buy the game. Like it's a whole thing. It's a whole rigmarole. But kind of seeing Game Pass as we're the Netflix of gaming now. This is just so much more for them, and I definitely see it as like a great buy. Like this is like you want to like if you ask me if I'm a parent and I know that like what's the best bang for my buck, it's gonna be the Xbox Series One XS or whatever, the smaller version,
and it's gonna Xbox Series S.
Xbox Series S, yeah, all right. Sorry, I'm sad we're gonna be leaving the Xbone/Xboner namesake behind us. Okay.
You don't want
Makes me sad.
You don't want the X Boss though.
Oh, X Boss, that sounds awesome. Actually, like that. Anyway, no, like if I'm thinking about like, because this is kind of how I had to discuss things with my parents when I was like talking about new consoles as a kid. And the argument always like, well, what are you gonna do with your old stuff? What are you gonna do with your old games? And if I'm a parent and I'm talking about this, or if I'm a teen and I'm telling my parents about this, Xbox is the easier sell because you just say, listen, mom, dad, you don't need to keep buying me games because if we just pay $15 a month, I can download whatever games I want and play them as long as I want, and then like delete them and then like download different ones, and it's all like that's all for free as long as we pay the monthly fee.
Yeah,
like, that's such a killer. Like that's such a killer thing, especially if you're like you're a parent, you have multiple kids, you have like that whole thing of like you don't have to worry about, okay, well if we buy Timmy this game, Tommy's gonna want us to buy this game, and like Sally's gonna want us to buy Barbie, horse dancing adventure, whatever it is. Like that's on that's on Game Pass. There you go. Why not? Like if you check, like that's such a great buy for families that even if it's like, okay, so the main console for the next gen is going to be in the living room, but we still have like the Xbox One X or an Xbox One S or whatever. So put that in like the boys' room, and they can still play they can still play a lot of the games from Game Pass on there. Like it's such a great deal.
Yeah, one of that just reminded me. One of because I have the Game Pass app on my phone, so I get like occasional push notifications being like, "Hey, play this before it leaves." Because the like one of the lesser talked about things of Game Pass is the non-first party games do come and go on the platform. They're on there for a set number of months, just like Netflix occasionally has movies that hop off because they're now going to HBO or something like that. But I had a notification a couple days ago that you talking about it just reminded me of. That was basically like play it before it leaves, and it's leaving the console on 9:30. Play before they go. Dishonored 2, and I'm like, hey, I wonder if Dishonored 2 is actually still leaving Game Pass now at this point. It's probably going to leave for a time because obviously it's going to take a little bit of time for this deal to actually go through and get approved and all that stuff. But yeah, it was just like, oh hey, it's weird that as of 2 days ago they were like announcing Bethesda games getting ready to leave the service that are now obviously going to be kind of a staple of the service. So yeah, the to your point, the fact that with Bethesda now, as well as the recently announced EA Play kind of integration into Game Pass, yeah, you come home with this new console and just the Xbox Game Pass subscription, and you have 100 plus games from Xbox first party, including Bethesda now, as well as a ton of EA games. It's not all EA games because EA Play is weird and whatnot, but like it's enough of EA's library that you're gonna get probably a great time without having to put another dollar into picking up or purchasing any other things on the platform. You could absolutely be entertained for the rest of your days just off of Game Pass stuff. But it's not good. It isn't everything, so you might still have to occasionally, pick up something else. As for me, I'm kind of already in the boat of like I'm planning on getting this system anyway. And it's like it's weird because I'm in a very unique position where I can afford this even, despite the pandemic and all that stuff. And like realistically, if my mind is actually like winning out this debate, there's no reason for me to have an Xbox Series X day one, because I am a PlayStation gamer predominantly. Most of Xbox's first party stuff don't appeal to me, and admittedly, I do love most of Bethesda's franchises here, with Fallout and Elder Scrolls in particular being kind of at the top of that list. But those aren't going to be spitting out new games anytime soon, so I don't really need like a new platform to play them on because I already have platforms to play them on currently. But I'm still like this certainly like does make it more appealing for years down the line when Starfield comes day and date to Xbox and I don't have to pay any more for it, or the next Elder Scrolls, or God forbid by the end of the next generation a Fallout 5. I'm very excited for all those things, and I'm like the biggest thing I'm probably going to play on, if I am able to get an Xbox Series X day one, is probably going to still be Cyberpunk 2077, and even that is because I already have an Xbox copy of the game, as I touched on with Cam the other day, like because I bought the Xbox One X collector's edition of Cyberpunk kind of thing. So it came with a code through the game, so I already have effectively a code for Cyberpunk on Xbox. And as I become less and less like insistent upon, I'm going to play this game just for the trophies or something like that on PlayStation, if I am looking for the best way of playing games, like for Bethesda games especially, that has never been PlayStation. Like they have always run worse on PlayStation, especially like the big RPGs specifically. So like I might just say, yeah, that like Xbox is going to be the best place to play those games next gen, and the fact that I'm not going to have to pay for them is even better on top of that. So I'm still in the camp where I'm probably going to be gunning for a pre-order tomorrow morning, but I realistically I don't have to. There's really nothing drawing me in on day one that is going to force my hand on that, but it'll be one less thing I have to worry about 6 months from now, because I'm not expecting like the prices to drop anytime soon. So
right.
I'm trying to think if I had any other questions for you guys I wanted to tackle going into this. Any other like topics or points on this that you guys wanted to circle back or touch around? Okay.
No, I think as far as that goes, I think we're good. As far as like, let me double check the doc to make sure we're not missing.
Yeah,
anything.
I guess I would say
no,
here's a
we do have a couple of things.
There's a couple shoutouts that we'll dive into, but one last thing on this story that I'll throw out there as a hypothetical for you guys. I would say overwhelmingly, at least in my feed, which is admittedly also a very PlayStation centric feed, the even with that, I would say overwhelmingly this news has been received pretty positively across the industry, with people basically like excited at the prospect of Bethesda not being locked away to Xbox. They think Xbox will, do what they've done with Ori or what they've done with Outer Worlds and put those out on other platforms in Minecraft. So it's not the like we're gobbling up Insomniac, so Spider-Man can only be on PS4 or that kind of stuff. But I'm curious what you guys would think if if the tables had been turned, if the news today had been breaking news, Sony acquires Bethesda. What would that like? What do you think the reaction to that would be?
A lot of posts about people canceling pre-orders on PS5s.
Because you think people would be canceling their PS5 pre-orders because they can't because they're like locking down Bethesda games?
Yes, actually, I would say so. Or maybe more people would just be posting about, well, looks like I'm getting 2 consoles this generation.
I did see a couple posts that were basically like, well, I guess I don't need to worry about trying to get a PlayStation pre-order because this will like I only need to be an Xbox Series X person for this generation because this does it if somebody is like, hey, Bethesda games are really the only third-party stuff I care about, and now I'm gonna get them all on Xbox. Cool, I don't need to get a PlayStation as a third-party console if they're that kind of person. So I have seen a couple of those posts. Frank, what do you think? Do you think do you think like Cam, we would see people basically like canceling their PS5 orders out of protest of Sony gobbling up another big studio?
I don't know if we quite see that, but I think it would be really interesting because, I don't know if it would be received as positively, especially after some of the other things Sony's done recently that people have kind of lauded or thrown around like, hey, this is kind of like anti-consumer, or like, you're trying to lock these things down to your console, which is how the game is played. But I think it's interesting where, on the other side, when you hear this news from Microsoft, in Xbox, everything's going to be on Game Pass. They're even going to let it be on other consoles for the most part, except for like, maybe some specific cases. So I was like, I think a lot of people, it's received really positively, and a lot of people are excited, including even PlayStation fans. But then I think it's funny how like, on the other side, if PlayStation was like, we're doing this, it would mean that they probably are locking everything down to PlayStation. And you wouldn't just get those games on like a Game Pass necessarily. Maybe the PS Plus collection, which I guess Fallout's already on.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that would be interesting because I don't even know if it would be like too many people being angry, but I don't think it would be like resounding positive necessarily. Although I think we would be excited.
Yeah, I definitely think I think Game Pass is the saving grace in this deal for Microsoft right now because like and PlayStation doesn't have that offering. So if Bethesda had been acquired by PlayStation here, it would have been like, okay, well, yeah, Sony's first party library now just gets even better. But all of those games that are historically third party games that people want and people love, are not gonna like, because PlayStation is much less likely, it would seem, to publish something on their competitors' boxes. So you're not, if PlayStation were doing it, you wouldn't see Elder Scrolls 6 with the PlayStation Interactive Entertainment Studios logo pop up before the Microsoft logo or whatever.
That's never happening. Like,
yeah.
Sony has such disdain towards Microsoft.
I don't think they have disdain. I just think that's not their business strategy. That's
true.
Their business strategy isn't we're going to be a software company, which Microsoft's is increasingly. They are still a hardware company, and very kind of like they are the most traditional games company of the big three at this point, because Nintendo's always been doing their weird stuff, and as we talked about earlier, so Xbox has absolutely been like just heading more and more into the like, hey, we don't really care what box you buy, even with like xCloud now, like we don't care about you buying this hardware so much, we want you paying that monthly fee and just kind of like getting it into our ecosystem, and we'll make our money off you that way. That certainly seems to be kind of their strategy at this point. Very much going the the Netflix route. Another question that's I think just a fun hypothetical exercise, because obviously some of the speculation that's been going around and a lot of people have been throwing around today is like, oh well, now in response to this, PlayStation needs to like buy Konami or something like that. And well, I think the people that are like making the I think the people that are making those like calls do not understand at all how much more money Microsoft has to spend on things like this than Sony. Nor do I think they realize that Konami has zero interest in selling because they make plenty of money off their pachinko machines. But
yeah,
pie in the sky, both for Xbox to maybe even further round out their portfolio of studios, and as a response to this purchase, what studio do you think, what studio do you think Xbox should buy next, and what studio do you think, again, pie in the sky, completely unrealistic, feel free to go nuts, do you think that PlayStation should acquire, or should seek to acquire out of this? Cam, I'll throw it to you first.
Essentially you're just asking, like, what's the dream scenario for what your favorite studio would be to join the Xbox team, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just have to.
If you guys want it's like a bit of time to think about it, I can kind of throw my ideas out there first.
I actually have one right away.
Okay.
And it's kind of a play off of what we saw from the PS5 date and announcement reveal, but Square Enix.
Ooh.
Like, Xbox has always wanted that arm in Japan.
Yep.
They've craved it for years. They found some minor successes here and there amidst a lot of failure. I think acquiring Square Enix and making them the Japanese Xbox brand, Microsoft brand, still put out everything to multiple consoles, no problem. But, like, for Xbox then, for them to say this is our foothold, this is our beachhead in the East, would be, I think, a massive boon to them. I think that if you got, like, you look at what happened with Scalebound, they pulled the trigger and they canceled Scalebound after basically saying enough is enough.
Mm-hmm.
How many, like, we would not get these, and not only that, but Microsoft knows how to manage their, like, a big problem that Square Enix has is that, like, the most obvious version of this is, hey, does Square Enix have an upper management problem? It's like, I don't know. Did they not tell the guy who was directing the Final Fantasy VII Remake that he was directing it until they announced it?
Like, that ended up working out just fine.
It did. The game ended up working out just fine. Like the saga of Tetsuya Nomura's suffering at Square Enix continues. So, like, upper management, like they have a lot of struggles and a lot of problems that they had there that I think, like, the leadership team at Xbox could definitely come in and help iron out and, like, help. And I don't want to say, like, address the problems, but definitely give them the resources they need so that they're not because the biggest issue with mismanagement is it's likely that there's not enough resources to go around all the time. Because, like, sometimes those, like, I don't know, I say that, but War of the Visions, they must be raking in the dollars on that game. Because that game's, like, really good. And, like, man, sometimes I'm like, I'm glad I'm unemployed, because, like, I'd be spending some money on some of these Vision heroes that I want, man.
Fair.
Like, they got a killer app with that one, in my opinion. But yeah, like, I think Square Enix would just be such a good boon for them. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that as just like, oh, I just see it being such a win-win-win scenario. Because also imagine they're like, hey, guess what's coming to Game Pass? Every Final Fantasy, and, like, the best versions of them.
Yeah, and many of them already are coming to Game Pass because Square Enix is happy to, like, especially at this point, Square Enix has made their money off of most of those games, so they're fine saying, like, yeah, put Final Fantasy 15 on Game Pass, or put Final Fantasy 15 in the PlayStation Plus collection. We don't have too many people coming out to buy them at $20 nowadays, so they're fine doing that just to get more eyes on those products.
Oh my gosh. And can you imagine the kind of support Final Fantasy 14 would have from Xbox?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, like, Square Enix in particular would kind of also be my pitch for, like, Xbox's next acquisition in the same vein of, like, Xbox has always wanted that, like, foothold in the Japanese market. I saw other people kind of throwing out From Software as a potential, like, acquisition partner.
That'd be great.
it very much in the same vein as like, well, PlayStation's got Deathloop. Well, PlayStation's getting Demon Souls. Well, Xbox is just going to take From Software from them. So goodbye to Bloodborne 2.
The whales of agony that would fill the Twitter sphere would be painful.
Frank, do you have any pitches for potential studios for Xbox next?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this is kind of pie in the sky. Probably not gonna happen, but I would love to see it. I think you guys would be excited too. What if Phil Spencer managed to buy BioWare from EA? Like he doesn't buy EA, they just buy BioWare.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
I said it wasn't gonna happen. It's just like it would be amazing.
I was about to say, I was going to interrupt you and say, like, well, Trevor and I definitely gave some pie in the sky, but no, yours is definitely the pie in the sky, my dude.
No, I mean, like, I think, like, because the weird thing about Square Enix is Square Enix also would make, like, Square Enix, because of, like, historical alignment, makes way more sense as a potential Sony studio or set of studios. And that's also where it comes into, like, because if they buy Square Enix, they're also getting stuff like Crystal Dynamics and I guess not IO anymore because IO went independent, but like they're getting kind of the Square Enix publisher side of things, just like Bethesda. They would be getting like all of those studios and not just like the Japanese arm of Square Enix. I guess Eidos Montreal would be another kind of like branch under that, but like. All of that, obviously, Square Enix has a significantly larger lineage with PlayStation, so it would make way more sense for that to happen. But also,
and
again,
they're both Japanese
PlayStation does not have the money to do that, despite what like people wish were the case. I don't see Sony shelling out the money in the way that Microsoft has, unless the next Spider-Man and Venom movies just make bank, and then they're like, yeah, our film division's killing it, so here you go, games division, like enjoy this credit card.
That's not how that works. It's the opposite of how that works.
Exactly, yeah. On the PlayStation side of things, though, I guess a like more like smaller realistic option that I would expect would be like Kojima Productions, just taking them and fully making them an in-house studio. I think that would be like the next potential target for them. Death Stranding probably did pretty well for them. They're probably very happy with it, and obviously they love I guess, like, I don't know what current PlayStation looks like, but Andrew House certainly loved working with Kojima enough to basically give him carte blanche on that first game. So if the long rumored ideas of like them somehow acquiring the Silent Hills IP and giving that to Kojima were to happen, it would make sense that PlayStation would try and just kind of lock down Kojima Productions. Again, they're not going to take all of Konami, even though Konami has that great lineage, because Konami just doesn't seem to have any interest in really doing something like that. Do you guys have any picks for how in a dream scenario Sony would respond to this?
I know maybe they're not on like the same level, especially some of the ones we've talked about with like From or Square Enix, which would all be great purchases. But I just think Sony should finally just bite down and buy Bluepoint. Like,
oh yeah, that'd be a good one.
Put a ring on it, like lock it down. And I know it's not like necessarily Microsoft is necessarily hitting them up or even other people. Like I know they have a great relationship and Bluepoint's just going to keep making games for them, but like they're an incredibly amazing studio for what they do. I just say bring them in-house, and even if all they do is just remake amazing things from the catalog in like super high quality, like just let them do that for forever.
Yeah.
And just give them the entire catalog. Like,
yeah, it's a great pick. Any pitches from you there, Cam?
If we're talking about Sony, I would probably say a good pickup for them would be, I'm trying to think, what would be a good pickup for them? I think now here's a thought. Supergiant.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Ooh, yeah.
Like I know they're on everybody's mind
hot on the heels of Hades, yeah.
Yeah, Hades, but I mean, like remember, it's important to note, like Bastion started off as an Xbox arcade game. Like that's where it launched. That's where it first gained
That's
traction. That's the start of Real Supergiant. So
that's weird because because I obviously wasn't paying attention at that time because I wasn't really in the Xbox ecosystem. I associate Bastion with PlayStation because I finally played it on my Vita. So like
there you go.
I was just about to say like yeah, Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, all of them iconic, PlayStation titles, and then you're like Bastion started as an Xbox. I was like, oh, that's right, it did.
Yeah, no, like that's where I played it. It came out during the Xbox Arcade Summer, and it was like was entranced and fell in love with this game. Like it's such a good game. And Supergiant's just been killing it ever since. And that's another thing. I think Supergiant fits into the kind of like artistic slant that a lot of Sony owned studios like to have. Um, Whether because even though like if you look at like Hades and Bastion are probably the most alike, but they're still so radically different. And at the same time, like Transistor and Pyre are two completely different types of games than Hades and Bastion. So they definitely have more of a like they have an incredible like narrative style that's brilliant. Like I'll never forget like beating Bastion, doing the quote unquote correct thing, and then realizing, oh, that's the bad ending. I need to like it's the point of Bastion is like moving forward, like not focusing on the past and moving forward. And so I did that, and like I got really into the story of Bastion like way deeper than I should have, because like I still am haunted by that story in a good way. Like I guess I shouldn't say it haunted. It stuck around with me for a long time. I still think about it. Transistor, same way. Like they do such a great job of like creating like really beautiful, like hauntingly beautiful stories. That's what they do incredibly well. And I think that totally fits as a Sony studio. So that'd be my pitch.
Yeah, like
Also, it wouldn't take forever to get Hades 1.0 release.
I mean, I have not hopped into Hades, but like what I keep hearing is people really plotting, the time they took with early access, to really
Yeah.
refine that game over the last couple years. So
As
you know,
somebody, as
shout
somebody
out to
who
that.
owns,
I'm perfectly happy to get the as Greg often says when PC ports finally come to PlayStation and everything. I'm like I'm more than happy to have PC beta test all those games and I'll finally take the good versions of them when they come to console. So I'm very
yeah.
much looking forward to Hades. I don't know if I'll hop into it on Switch myself. Like Hades is one in particular that I've had my eye on. Because I also love Supergiant, but the roguelite nature of it is like it's very rare that those kinds of games draw me in. So
I
I would
really
kind of
don't.
echo that.
Yeah, I really don't like that people are like considering Hades, even though it's technically a roguelike, it does not like the way that the like life reset happens in Hades is so different than any other game that I've really played that has that kind of element to it, where there is something about like dying and resetting back at the beginning in Hades that is like unique and special in a way that like honestly my feelings about it was okay, well, because I bought I own it on the I'm the only reason I'm not playing Hades right now, dude, is because my PC's down. That's the only reason I'm not playing it right now, because I own it on the Epic Store, and because that's where it was available. I think still on PC. That's the only place it's available. Um, but like I loved it.
I think they've come to Steam at this point now.
Have they? Okay.
Maybe I feel like I remember seeing that news at some point, but
Good for everybody. No, I played it on like when it was in the alpha in the green light phase, and like I loved it. And I actually put it down because I said I want to wait to the full release because I don't want to play this bit by bit as it progresses forward. I really just want to play it all at once. And it was a fantastic game back then. It looks like it's only gotten better. I'm super stoked. If I can just get my stinking PC up and running, I'll be playing that like nobody's business. So yeah.
yeah. All right. So I want to throw one more idea out there. go with me on this. So instead of like one big studio, I want to do like a package deal of 4. Some of them we've already kind of touched on, but I think this would be just like Sony grabbing up Sony-esque games, and that would be or studios. That would be Mossmouth, the Spelunky people.
Oh, nice.
Because
That'd be a
again,
good one.
even though that's not my cup of tea, I know it's a ton of people's cup of tea.
And it
Drinkbox
totally fits
Studios.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nope.
Would be number 2, the Guacamelee and Severed people. Supergiant that we've already touched on. And then I know it's not necessarily PlayStation, given that they kind of kicked things off on the 3DS, but Yacht Club Games. Bring the future of Shovel Knight to PlayStation. That would be like, those would be my like, hey, these would be good acquisitions for Sony to target, that I think are much more in Sony's wheelhouse in terms of studio sizes that they could acquire. Yeah. Well, unless we have anything else, I think we can head over into the Shoutouts land, is where we kind of give some love to other articles or videos or whatever else around the internet. I want to give a shout out personally to an article over on VentureBeat from Jeff Grubb, who very much sums up my feelings on Super Mario 3D All-Stars that I go into a little bit with Cam on this week's episode of That Nerdy Site Show. But his article, it wasn't as much as it could have been. It's like the 3rd longest segment on the episode. So
That's true. That's a long episode, though.
So Legend of Korra and the boys still got more time than me ranting about Nintendo for a little bit. But yeah, Jeff Grubb's article is entitled "Super Mario 3D All-Stars is Nintendo at its worst," and it very much kind of touches on a lot of the same touchstones that I had in kind of my thoughts of like Nintendo should be embarrassed at the poor quality of the port they put out, and the only reason they do it is because they know they can get away with it. They know they don't have to put resources into re-releasing these games like Activision did with Crash Bandicoot recently, like overhauling those games from the ground up, or Tony Hawk most recently. The amount of work that is being put into those remakes and remasters and re-releases is running circles around what Nintendo has done here, and Nintendo, like, this isn't the first time that Nintendo does this. So check out that article from Jeff Grubb. It's a solid read, and if you feel the same way I do about like not just looking at everything Nintendo does as like rose-colored glasses or whatever, it's a good read that I think kind of very well articulates a lot of those points. And then, Cam, you had one here that I'll kind of let you talk a little bit about, but it is called Microsoft's Bethesda Acquisition Paves Way for Netflix of Gaming by Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg News. So it's basically, again, kind of drawing from today's news, but specifically kind of looking at the Game Pass side of things. Anything to add on that, Cam?
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit. I mentioned it, the phrase Netflix of gaming, during the podcast today. Here's the thing. I like to speculate like a son of a bitch. I love speculation. I love like doing predictions. I love seeing trends and like analyzing, okay, well, how's this going to look? In this piece, Jason Schreier really delves into kind of like a few bits of the nit and grit and the nuts and bolts of this deal with the Bethesda being bought by Microsoft and what that can mean for the Game Pass going forward. We mentioned some stuff here. He goes into a lot more detail in that article, into a few places that I really enjoyed. It's an excellent read. Jason Schreier continues to be the best games journalist out there. And he is like, it's a great read. It's a great piece. And he really kind of talks a lot about like the potential Game Pass has now with this new direction that Microsoft is taking, what could happen, and check it out. It's a great read.
Yeah, just one of the things I meant to mention earlier, kind of crunching the numbers, the idea of like $7.5 billion if you divide that by $15, because obviously now the biggest selling point is getting these games on Game Pass, and so if your goal is to up Game Pass subscriptions at a $15 entry point on Game Pass, the deal would pay for itself basically with 500 million months of Game Pass, which if you break that out over a year is about 41 million subscribers. So if this gets 41 million people onto Game Pass for a year, for the span of a year, that will more or less cover the asking price here of the deal. I think that's quite high, but it's also that's also only looking at 1 year versus the next 10 years of Xbox's Game Pass library kind of thing.
A common business trick to kind of figure out the value of a deal and how businesses are actually looking at it, and it's definitely different for major corporations. But for small to medium-sized businesses, usually what you do is you take the gross revenue of a business over the last 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
And you kind of use that as a projection for what the next 3 to 5 years would look like. You basically pay off a valuation like that. I have no doubt that was definitely part of the calculations Microsoft made. But if you also think about what in the next 3 to 5 years is coming out from Bethesda, it's Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 5, ancillary Fallout projects.
Starlight being one of the most anticipated games of the last decade.
Despite the fact that we've only gotten a single dumb trailer for it.
Yeah, and not even a trailer, just the title screen and official confirmation of the name.
Yeah, and that was such a bad event. Yeah, so when you look at what they have going for them, it's clear that in the next 3 to 5 years, there's a good chance that they will recoup. Because it's not just, and if you think just Game Pass, but if they also make these titles available everywhere, then that means on PlayStation, PlayStation, and any ancillary place that you would put these games, because as we know, Bethesda will put a game anywhere that they can fit it. So, we'll see what happens with it and how many people will just outright buy it too. It's good. It's a great. The deal makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah,
it's one of those things. I always, given my business background, I always love these kinds of doing these kinds of analysis. It's why I went and dug up the comparable prices of a lot of these big deals in recent years. Because I remember writing an article about the King acquisition, back when it happened, and the whole internet was this makes no sense, blah blah blah, and I was no, it makes plenty of sense because Candy Crush makes a shit ton of money every year, and they're just going to keep doing that, and Activision's going to like that. But more so than that, Activision is also now getting all of the intelligence behind how Candy Crush has made so much money. As Activision and Blizzard move more and more into the mobile market, they're absolutely going to take a lot of those tips and tricks, and I imagine they've probably been doing a ton of that, and they've probably been putting a ton of new titles out there on the market for the mobile side of things. And it's just it's something that we don't pay attention to because we're predominantly console or maybe PC side of things, and a lot of that mobile news just doesn't raise to that level. But they make a shit ton of money, so I'm sure that deal has paid off just fine for them when all has been said and done. Just I'm sure obviously Minecraft has paid off perfectly for Microsoft, and I have no doubt that this Bethesda deal will continue to pay off for Microsoft. The one little worry that I would have about any of this that we didn't really get into, and we don't really have to delve too deep into it now or anything like that, is the concern of Microsoft gobbling up all of these studios, not just Bethesda, but everybody else that they've acquired in the last 5 years, is if something happens and Phil is no longer around, what is the next head of Xbox? Does that match his vision of things, or will we end up seeing kind of an EA situation where companies that are no longer performing well end up just kind of being shuttered and sold off or just closed down to eventually cut costs because the next regime doesn't have the same vision for what Microsoft Studios can or should be. What does that end up looking like? Is it a case of Microsoft growing too big too soon with their studios and all of these games or all these studios will have like one, game behind them, but when those games, launch eventually and don't move the needle in Game Pass subscriptions or sales or whatever, what is the likelihood that how are they going to measure success of these studios for their next outing after that? That's certainly a concern that's out there versus Bethesda might have been as a more independent studio. They might have been more, more personally invested in those studios succeeding or helping those studios succeed as opposed to these studios now being like one part of the Microsoft machine. I think that's something that, obviously it's too early to tell, but I can see a world where some of these studios aren't around in 5 years' time because they've closed down or they've merged with other studios or something because Xbox has decided we need to focus, these guys' efforts on such and such a game and not let them kind of do their own thing. So be interesting to see what the future holds for Xbox Game Studios. But yeah, I think that is going to do it for this week's show. Let me get back to the doc over here. And we don't really have an outro built in for this one because Logan, I think, just kind of always wings it. But as always, when you listen to our stuff, we would love it if you support us by liking or rating or reviewing the podcast on whatever service you can. Subscribing, of course, is also a wonderful metric for us. And if you are feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. This is one of our shows that is made possible solely by the support from our patrons. It was not kind of part of our original programming, but we reached some of those Patreon goals that helped kind of birth this show into life. And now it's one of these fun ones we get to do and tackle video game news every week. So yeah, you can do all that. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to in outside of the scope of this show here, Cam?
Not really. I mean, we have a few irons in the fire that I'm really stoked about, but no pun intended. I'm pretty stoked for some stuff we have coming up. So keep your ears open and your eyes available. I messed up that. Anyway, have
eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled.
Your eyes peeled. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Frank?
Not this week. I've just been burning all my time getting super high combos and scores in Tony Hawk.
Nice.
Hells yeah, dude. I just finally got the sick score in the mall.
Nice.
So good. It's so tough. That one, I hate the downhill ones because they're so hard to circle around after you go past a certain point. They're absolute nightmare. Especially because the mall has that section that you think would be easy to skate in, but it's actually a nightmare. Down at the bottom.
Yeah, I know exactly what area you're talking about.
Yeah, because you're I'm going to grind on this, and it's nope, you're going to go ahead and actually biff it on the corner of this thing that you're not even close to. Nightmare place. Poorly constructed. I digress.
That just reminded me, one thing I wanted to pick your guys' brains on, since obviously we did not have you guys on the Sony reactions last week, but I thought of you both, very fondly during the Sony conference when Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition was shown. I was like, this is a weird waste of time in this conference, but I'm sure Frank and Cam are happy with this.
Dude, it's a special edition. They're putting in Virgil.
That's what I was going to say.
Proper Virgil.
Yeah.
It's going to be sick, and you get to see a story mode from his perspective. It's going to be so good.
I mean, the story was already great with the minimal amount he was in. I can't wait to see anything new from him and how he plays. It should be super fast and amazing. And what is it? It's 4K, 60 or 120 FPS or something insane.
It's 60K, 120 FPS. Yeah.
I think 4K and then 120 FPS I think is what they're aiming for. The features that I remember seeing highlighted were they're adding turbo mode where you can basically play at 1.2 times speed. So just go nuts. They even talk about in the PlayStation blog post, like, we tried 1.3 but it got too crazy, so we think 1.2 is the sweet spot.
Sorry, the phrase is crazy. Shout out to my Devil May Cry fans out there. We know each other. We're in the atmosphere. We feel each other.
There's a
I'm feeling you, Frank. I'm feeling you.
I'm here.
New legendary Dark Knight difficulty mode. If you're into that kind of thing. The new system, just because of its added horsepower, basically can handle more enemies on screen. So, so I think you'll see that, and then the Virgil mode or the Virgil edition, which will be included in the special edition version of the game on PS5, but is going to come to PS4 in a paid DLC pack as well. So. So I just wanted to pick your guys' brains on DMC real quick about that. Cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. The only thing I will give a plug to is go check out this week's episode of That Nerdy Site Show with Cam and myself talking about we talk a lot about Legend of Korra. We talk about The Boys, as kind of touched on earlier. I touch on a lot of my frustrations with the Super Mario 3D All-Stars shortcomings, and we tackle a couple other little things here and there throughout the episode, but Legend of Korra and The Boys are kind of the two big touchstones of the episode, so check that out if you are a fan of either of those series. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site on Twitter, and that's going to do it. So thank you guys again for joining me. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.